Hey everyone, I'm Rabbi Tzvi Waxman.
And I'm Rabbi Shalom Rodin.
We're here at the Hanging at the Hub podcast, which we created to be a place where it's real talk, people and rabbis, where we discuss all kinds of everyday topics and find the Jewish perspective on it.
Everyone has a story, whether you're famous or not, and we try to bring that out to everyone.
So with all our interviewees, hopefully you can learn something. We can learn something, and should be fun.
All the best.
Hey everyone, we're here with another episode of Hanging at the Hub, where we taught real talk, rabbis and people. And we're here with, of course, my colleague, Rabbi Shalom Rodin, and Rabbi Tzvi Waxman.
How's everybody?
And a special guest, Leah Herschberg.
Hello, everyone.
And we'll get to, obviously, we're going to jump into it. Leah is a close friend of Jet. We'll get involved with, Leah came on our Israel trip as well with our wives. And we want to get into her story and so much more. I think it's very, very interesting. So let's kick it off and start with this. Where are you from? Because I know you have an accent. I'm always trying to figure out, where is that from? My wife tells me, I forget. Where are you from?
So a lot of people either pick up on it or are completely oblivious to it. So I was born and raised in Costa Rica. Small Jewish community. I would say right now it's probably about 5,000 to 6,000 people. In the recent years, it's grown a little bit, giving some of the less than desirable living conditions in a lot of South American countries. There's been a lot of people flocking upwards to Costa Rica. Unfortunately, at times they've brought a lot of the danger that they're avoiding in their home countries. They've brought it to Costa Rica, but still a pretty tight-knit Jewish community. So growing up, I grew up in a very traditional, obviously Jewish household. You know, my both parents born Jewish, born in Costa Rica. My grandparents on my dad's side came over during the war. My grandparents on my mother's side, a little bit on the younger side. My grandfather has passed, but born in Costa Rica, both of them, both from large families. And where was I going with this?
So you're saying how you're getting to become chef?
Oh, to become a chef. So my parents, I mentioned my dad is a doctor. My mom is a psychologist. So coming from very traditional jobs. And I've always kind of been outside the box in a way. You know, initially, and I've always loved art and design. And I'm very type A, very meticulous, structured. And so when I was starting to have to think, what am I going to do when I grow up? I think I veered towards architecture. And I started taking some classes about 3D design. And I thought that was a path I wanted to go down. But my father's mother, she just passed earlier this year at 100 years old.
Wow. She
was the oldest living member of the Jewish community when she passed. She was an cook, but I mean, incredible. But she was one of those that used her coffee cup to measure. Yeah. And it's like, what are you doing? This is not a real cup. And so I was in the kitchen with her a lot, making farfel and making all her pastries. And I loved it. And I think my parents saw that. So I remember vividly one Sunday sitting at lunch with them at a restaurant, and we were talking about, I was right before I was going to go to Israel, and talking about my future and what I was going to do. And I said architecture, but I said it because it was a traditional career, something, but deep inside, cooking was always my passion. And then when I graduated, I did a stint down in Palm Beach at the Breakers. I was one of the pastry chefs on site there, which was a great experience. I was there for Brian Gumbel's wedding and other celebrities that got married down there. So it was really unique. And then I met Adrian.
Yeah, that's what I was going to get to next. So
I just wanted to know, as a professional cook.
Yeah.
That's what we call you, right?
Chef.
Yeah. Chef has more.
Cook is like when we were in yeshiva, we had a cook.
Yeah. Adrian's grandmother is like, you should see, she's such a good cook, like a line cook. And Adrian's like, she's not a piece of chef, grandma.
You got it.
Yeah.
Is it a skill? Is it something you could learn, or do you naturally have to have a knack for it? Because I'm an aspiring chef myself.
Okay.
What are you saying?
The only thing I can really make is scrambled eggs. I would love to, to grow
into the next step.
More depth to my cooking, or my chefing. I don't know what it's cooking, right?
Yeah.
So how is this something that you naturally you're good at, or you can learn to do it? Is it
listen, there's a lot. So you'll see all these celebrity chefs, and a lot of them went to different culinary schools, and who knows how much passion was there before they went to cooking school, or if they gained it once they started. But to make the decision to go into culinary school, you have to have some love and some sort of basic skill to do it. Otherwise, why would you pursue
Right.
that career?
It's like going to art school and you can't draw.
Exactly. So you have to have something innate in you to kind of want to pursue that further.
So when did you meet Adrian?
So I was working at the Breakers, and I was working on 80-hour weeks. It was insane. I had no life. It was crazy how much work I was doing, because I was working in the main pastry kitchen, and then they transferred me over to, they had an offsite restaurant. So I was a pastry chef there. So I was juggling everything. And my sister-in-law, my Adrian's brother's wife, we got reacquainted visiting my cousin in Miami, and she's like, "Hey, are you seeing anybody?" I'm like, "No, I'm working all the time. I don't have time to see anybody." It's like, "Well, I have a cousin on her side of the family." So she set me up with him. It did not go over very well.
He didn't give you a Baruch Hashem, that's why. If he had given you a real one,
that would have been it. That would have taken it to the next level. But then a couple months later, she calls me up again. I'm like, "Oh, babe, like, we don't have a good track record here. You sure you want to do this again?" She's like, "No, it's my brother-in-law. He's in town from San Diego visiting family." I'm like, "Oh, I give him my number." So this was on the Saturday, and I was off in the morning. He called me up and spoke on the phone for several hours. It was great. And it's like, "Well, can we go out?" I said, "Well, actually, I'm going to be in Miami tomorrow visiting my mother's cousin in Bal Harbor. Let's meet up." And he's like, "Okay." So I spent a day with my mother's cousin. And
so you got married before you came to Dallas? You got married in Dallas? How'd you get to Dallas and all that?
Oh, so the move to Dallas. So when I met him, I was already, I had plans. Obviously, I knew I wanted to be with him, and I needed to stay in the US because I was still on the practical training part of my student visa, being from Costa Rica. So I applied to do my master's degree. So I stayed for another year and a half in North Miami doing a master's degree there in Aventura. And towards the end of it, Adrian was living in New York, and I said, "That's it. I'm tired of living here. I absolutely hate Florida." And I said, "I want to get out of here." So I finished my degree up at Baruch College in New York. So at that time, Adrian had a job opportunity in Austin. So we moved down to Austin a few months before Maya was born. And we lived in Austin for 6 years until, we would come to Dallas on, the Jewish holidays and for Thanksgiving. And most of Adrian's family is here. And obviously mine is in Costa Rica. I have a younger sister who now lives in Florida, but she was doing her medical work, and she was kind of shifting between cities all over the place. So we said, well, so if we're going to be close to family, why are we? And by the time we had bought an investment, a condominium in Austin. And so we were living in it. And when we were looking for a house, because we needed more space, we were looking for real estate in Austin. It's like, why are we looking in Austin? What's keeping us here? We have family in Dallas. Why aren't we moving to Dallas? And that's like all it took. And so we shifted our search to look in Dallas, and we moved here about 5.5 years ago at this point. And I don't see us going anywhere anytime soon. I love it here.
Hanging at the Hub will be right back. But first, here's another edition of Why Do We Do That?
Prayer. What is prayer? What's the history of where it came from? On a basic level, prayer expresses our belief in God. It's our recognition that we are totally dependent on Him. He's the one who controls everything. And we can ask Him from the most challenging of things to the most trivial. Nothing phases God. The Torah, the Bible, refers to prayer as a service of heart. Even though today we pray from a siddur and many people go to synagogue, that wasn't how it was always done. Originally, the mitzvah to pray didn't have a specific time, nor was it defined by a text. Every person would close their eyes and either bow their head and concentrate and talk to God. Generally, it started with praising God, then it was followed by asking for your needs, followed by showing gratitude, thanking God for everything He does for us. But after many years in the diaspora, people started really not connecting to God, and Ezra came along with the men of the Great Assembly, and they put together a prayer for 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, and night, known as the Shachris, the Mincha, and Maariv. Shachris in the morning, Mincha is the afternoon, and Maariv is at night. And lastly, the reason why we come together for a communal prayer is because there's a tremendous merit when Jews come together in unison and call out to God. The second reason we come to synagogue some people temple, some people call it shul, is because in a way it replicates what it was like in the Holy Temple, where God's presence was so prevalent that we want to relive what that was like even today. And that's why we pray.
So going back to that, because this is what I find like one of the coolest things. So you mentioned that you work for Kind.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us a little bit about, because I know you were one of the first few employees of a massive company.
Correct.
But I guess back then it wasn't. How did you get involved with Kind? And let's hear about like the early
days and how I got in. So talk about being at the right place at the right time. So after I graduated from Baruch College, I had my master's title and I had my culinary diploma. I'm like, all right, what am I going to do with this now? Obviously, the hospitality industry is very demanding. You're basically working when everybody is on their time off. And so I, newly married, I'm like, I'm not going to be working 80 hours a week. I'm never going to see my husband. This is never going to work. And so I needed something that would open more doors, more of a 9-to-5 friendly type of job environment. And so through mutual acquaintances between Adrian and one of the board members of Peaceworks back then, it wasn't called Kind back then, it was called Peaceworks, said, he's like, his name is Elliot. So Elliot's like, yes, I know this guy, Daniel. He's starting this company. He's has a lot of connections. Let's get together for brunch. Maybe he can help you network. All right. So we go to lunch, downtown Meatpacking District. We're sitting at brunch with Daniel. And
this is in New York, right?
This is in New York. Yeah, we're living in New York. This is literally after I came back from my honeymoon. This was, October of 2005. And Daniel, all over the place, a million connections. And we sit for a couple hours of brunch. And at the end, he always asks you, can I send you my resume? Hopefully you can connect me with a few people. He's like, no, I'm not connecting you with anybody. You're going to work for me. Like, I'm thinking to myself, what the hell am I going to do? I mean, this is a company that's selling, products back then made in collaboration between Arabs and Israelis. And that's why it was called Peaceworks. Like, what am I going to do for this guy?
What was the product?
Oh, he had many products. Okay. So basically the way the company started, he's a lawyer. Daniel's a lawyer. He's a Stanford. He did his thesis about, projects of collaboration between Arabs and Israelis, his big mission to, solve the conflict in the Middle East. And so he had all these different products made collaboration. So he had a line of all of tapenades, and he had a line of like Indonesian sauces, and he had another line of who knows what. The products were pretty mediocre, but we were selling them based on the social mission.
This is Daniel
Lubetsky.
Daniel Lubetsky.
Exactly. So he's
anyone who doesn't, if you didn't know him from Kind, like all of a sudden people watch Shark Tank and you see he's a guest.
You see Daniel Lubetsky there all the time.
Right.
Exactly.
So that was that was cool to see. Okay, yeah.
That's his new call to fame. Exactly. Shark Tank.
Does he tell you about it all the time? Do you like that, or he's pretty?
No, he puts a lot of stuff on social media sometimes. How he's buddies with Mark Cuban, and Daniel is amazing. I mean, he got me to where I am right now. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be at Kind. And so
he also has an accent. Where's he from?
He's from Mexico. So he has Latin roots from Mexico City, but he was born in San Antonio. He went to Trinity, and I think went to Stanford afterwards. So Daniel's
he both speaks Spanish.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you speak Spanish at brunch, or was it?
We spoke some Spanish.
Okay.
I'll tell you. I know the first. So he hires me, and back then the company was very lean. I mean, we're talking maybe 10 employees. Everybody wore multiple hats. So here I am. And obviously he hired me, and Daniel can be impulsive at times. So obviously this was one of his impulsive moves. He hires me, and then I officially have to go through the interview process with the person who would be my boss, whose name is, Rami Yoram, Israeli guy. Very different from Daniel, but he basically started the company with Daniel. And so I come in for an official interview with Rami, and Rami's probably thinking, what is this guy hiring her? Like, she's got no experience. She went to cooking school. She's got a master's. Okay. But so they created this position for me at Kind to start selling those products to other channels than grocery stores, because they had two other gals that were focusing on the East and West markets for grocery and natural stores. So they create this position for me. And obviously, if you think back, this is November, right after Thanksgiving of 2005. Nobody's interested in healthy. That wasn't a thing back then. And so just like it was the right place at the right time for me to talk to Daniel, it was not the right place and the right time for me to be selling, these products or anything semi-healthy to convenience stores and pharmacies and like all these random type of accounts. They used to be called alternative markets back then. So I'm literally compiling lists of convenience stores, everything from, Exxon and 7-Elevens to try to reach out to them to sell these products, which are not even a fit. It's like fitting a square peg in a round hole.
People
It's crazy.
Want Kit Kat and
They
Ben
want,
and Jerry's.
back then they want sodas and cigarettes and
Right.
candy and pork rinds, not healthy items, and definitely not, all of Top and Odds.
Right.
So I'm calling and it's miserable and I'm having no success. And
Who you calling, a corporate office or just random?
I would try to get to whoever the buyer was for anything food related, basically. Yeah, I would literally cold calling. And back then the company was called Peaceworks. So half the time I'm calling and I'm saying, hi, this is, Leah with Peaceworks. We don't want to save the whales today. And get hung up on because come on, it wasn't called Kind back then. It didn't get called Kind till 2010. So it was miserable. I went into Daniel's office because back then it was 10 of us. So his open door, he was always there. Like, Daniel, I appreciate this opportunity. I can't do this. This is not for me. I'm used to, bake a cake. It's almost immediate. I give it to you. You taste it. I see your satisfaction. It's immediate gratification. It's amazing. Here, this is like a lengthy month-long selling process for minimal results. I'm like, this is not for me. And I would go home to Adrian crying. I'm like, this is not for me. I can't do this. He's like, what do you want to do? And so I would go talk to Daniel and he's like, stick around, you're going to be fine. And he gave me a little bit more money because back then it was super lean, a little bit more money. And he kept me around. Well, obviously, he saw something in me that I did not see in me. And here I am 15 years later, out of the current roster of employees at Kind, I'm number 2. So wow. I have seen it all. It's remarkable and humbling to be part of a startup and to see a company go from what it was, where literally one hand did not know what the other hand was doing, to what it is now, this like mainstream recognizable brand, which is basically everything outside of grocery stores or mass or club. So airports, airlines, gyms, Old Navy and Kohl's. So anywhere where you see a front end with candy, there's also that better for you offering where Kind fits. So I had, direct responsibility for growing that from the ground up and making connections with Old Navy and with Kohl's and with Delta and with, all the accounts that we're in right now, which is remarkable. And it's been, a lengthy process, obviously tons of challenges, competition and pricing and an incredible amount of turnover with our accounts. So as soon as you feel you get it to a sweet spot with one of your buyers, boom, they're out the door. So you're starting again from square one. And so you're trying to maintain your space that you work so hard to get or grow it amidst change of buyers all the time. And it's really challenging, but it's also remarkably, fulfilling when you walk into one of these stores or you go to an airport and you see all the Kind products, or you go to Delta and people tell you, oh my God, I got a Kind bar on Delta. Well, I negotiated that contract. That's pretty damn cool. Yeah. So it's
one of the questions I was thinking to ask you is that, just as a mom, we'll get back into that part, but let's say a woman that has an entrepreneurial spirit, really could be anyone, man, male or female, but it's that, how do they get involved in the business world if they want to? But it's funny because hearing your story, you didn't have those aspirations to get involved with business per se in this type of format.
I fell into it by just random and a fluke,
which we believe in Judaism. Mm-hmm. So Shalom always likes to share this, like the Hebrew word mikra means, right, occurrence. And if you jumble the letters, it's rak, resh, kuf, mem, he, rak, me, Hashem, only from God.
Okay.
We believe things that seem like happenstance. The reality is it was perfectly orchestrated.
It's meant to be.
Which is meant to be. It's hard in the moment. I mean, now looking back at it, you're like, if you think about it, it's how your life, how everything
happened because of. If I hadn't had brunch with Daniel, I wouldn't be here today.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible. It really is incredible. But
so you said some of the challenges. So let's hear like some of the challenges. Let's say before, without being a mom, and because you're living in Dallas.
So
and the company is based in New York.
New York, exactly. So when I first joined Kind, they had a policy where you could not live anywhere outside New York. You had to work out of the home office, and you had to be there for God knows what reason. But that was a rule. And so actually a couple of employees left because of that reason, because the girl that was managing all the West Coast accounts, she was living in New York. Like, you need to be where you're managing in your territory. And that's actually a rule that Kind has now. Like, if you're not in close proximity to the headquarters of the accounts you manage, it doesn't work. I mean, It doesn't make any sense. So by the time I was pregnant with Maya, we knew we were moving to Austin. So I went to my boss. I said, listen, I we need to move out of New York. We're going to Austin. And by that time, there was more flexibility. So I was able to luckily keep my job with Kind. And by then I was traveling, my accounts are national. So I was traveling all over the country anyways. And I also had the responsibility of opening up the Canadian market for Kind. So I was already as is spending 1 week a month in Toronto and then another week the other month in Vancouver, visiting all my accounts up there. So it really didn't matter where I live as long as I had an airport nearby. And so there we go. We moved to Austin and same thing happened with Dallas. So the fact that my accounts are national and that I have reliable, air transportation out of here made it very easy for me to move wherever I needed to.
So you're traveling, you're probably, how often you say you're like all week or weekend or how does that?
During a regular year,
Yeah.
I'm probably on the road 35 to 40 weeks a year. That can range from a day trip to an overnight to 2 nights away. Sometimes if it's longer meetings or a special session, it'll be, Monday through Thursday or something like that. But the travel is substantial, and you get used to it for a while. I have my travel suitcase. It has everything.
Right.
I just swap out the clothes and I'm on my way next week. And
you're
I know
like triple platinum, this level,
yeah,
whatever.
keeping that status is going to be pretty difficult after 2020.
You don't get like locked in for life after a certain amount?
After a certain amount. I'm not quite there
Yeah,
yet. If I told myself, if I ever get to those, lifetime things, I'm failing at my home life because that means
Right.
I'm never around. So I don't want to get there. I want to get to a cushy point, but not too cushy.
Not too much.
I know all the staff at the United Club at the DFW airport. They all know
you.
me, my friend Jean. Like it's a weekly routine where I say hello. She helps me with the travel arrangements. So it's a nice perk to have to be that familiar with the travel. But it also has its
it's tough. I'm sure as a mom and
very
wife,
tough.
it's probably like probably a hard thing.
It's a very hard balance. And I always tell myself the moment that my home life starts to suffer because of the travel, that's when I need to make an immediate change. Luckily, I have an incredible support system at home. I mean, Adrian, my first business trip was when I had Maya, I was the first one at Kind to take a maternity leave because the company was so small back then, there was no policy. So the woman who did operations was also wearing her HR hat. It's like, all right, I don't know, you get 6 weeks. I don't know how this works. So
let's do 6 weeks.
Let's do 6 weeks. So I'm like, all right, 6 weeks. And like 3 of them are paid and the rest are unpaid. So I took the 6 weeks and then I had to go back to work and I had a sales meeting right back. So I'm like, Adrian, I know she's 6 weeks, but I gotta go, man. And so here I'm giving him the base, like, what do I do here?
Okay.
And he had to jump in and, we had a nanny to help, but she left, at 6 o'clock. And so bath time at night, he had to do it. And so that's why Maya's got Adrian wrapped around her finger, because they had this immediate bond from 6 weeks where they were buddies all the time because they had to, because I was traveling.
You were saying that, at certain points through the journey of as the company was growing, but you had your challenges, and even at, you frankly said that you wanted to give up, you wanted to quit.
Oh, many a times.
Was there a point, at what point did you realize, wow, this is a company, this is legit, this is something that, now is it $1 billion company or it's hundreds
We're
of millions?
over $2 billion in retail sales.
So it's
crazy.
Was you like, okay, wow, we made it? And what was that moment? And what was that part of your decision of like, okay, I'm going to stick it out, I'm going to stay, I see there's real potential here?
Well, I have to tell you, every year is a challenge. Every year is like, I want to throw in the towel. I'm not going to lie. Because every year there's new challenges that come up, whether it's a product recall, and then you have to go through all the steps to get the product back from your customers, and they're upset. And so there's always something added to the mix to kind of keep it interesting. Just when you think you're smooth sailing, bam, something else. And this year, bam, it was COVID. So having to basically deal with all of my accounts shutting down. But what was your question?
Yeah. So at what moment was it like, okay, I'm not getting, this is a company I want to stay with. There's like a real potential.
So
and I guess maybe in general, when did it, because you said it became Kind.
Exactly. So that's what I was going to allude to. So the company started in late 2004, 2005. That's when I joined in November of 2005. And for the first few years, it was tough. So Kind Bars kind of came a little bit later. We were selling all these other different products. We were selling a brand of bars called Be Natural that we were importing from Australia. So Daniel had met this gentleman in Australia. And so he was a master importer to the US of these Be Natural bars. which were far from natural. They were full of junk and they were disgusting. But here, that's what we started selling to convenience stores and drugstores as like a better for you bar, if you will. And then he started doing these Kind bars, which were also from Australia. In Australia, they were called Real, R-E-A-L, same packaging with the colors. And we were importing them container loads on a weekly basis from Australia. And obviously all the other products were not as successful as Kind bars, and slowly the Kind brand started taking off more and more. And it was in 2010 where the company made a strategic decision to bring on a field marketing team. So we had people out in 24 markets sampling the products and tasting the products and engaging with customers. And so the product was now being made in the US with all the ingredients sourced from the US. And that's when I started seeing, okay, because then the brand became more recognizable. It was no longer me having to beg at doors to be seen. People were more open to seeing me, to taking appointments, to taking the product on. Right. And so the
you're being rejected right?
Exactly. So and in some cases, people were calling me. It's like, hey, we want to carry your product, versus me having to go to them, which was like, wow, how the tables have turned all of a sudden. Like they're coming to me. And now I'm at a point where I'm very comfortable in my role, and I like it. I'm not going to say I love it. I like it. But is it something that I want to continue doing? The sales process, is it something that I want to continue doing in the future? Likely not. So the fact that I'm vested in the company, I have shares in the company, and so I'm seeing it through a little bit longer. But I just turned 40, and I know that I need to, soon make a change. And I don't want to get to the next, get to 50 and not be doing something that I am passionate about, getting up every morning and saying, yes, like this is not work. It's because you love it. And so when you love something so much and you do it every day, it's also not a headache anymore because you're enjoying it so much. And that's where I want to get to.
So let me ask you this, just a little changing of gears. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what year it was, but what year did you end up going to Israel? I forget, 3 years ago?
2018.
So 2018, okay, that sounds right. So for those who don't know, my wife Adina and Shalom's wife Chani, they partner with the organization called formerly JWRP, now mm-hmm. Momentum, and they take a group of women to Israel, right, for a week or so. And you heard about that trip from Allison or someone?
From Allison Epstein.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I knew multiple women that had gone with some of the other groups in Dallas.
Sure.
But Allison is the one who told me about Jet, and she's like, we should go together with this group.
Okay. So you decided to go on the trip, and so first of all, what were your expectations of the trip? What were you going in there to try to? And so there's listeners out there that, if anyone's out there that's a mom,
you need to go on this trip.
A mom who's has children under 18 years of age and lives within, 30 minutes of Dallas, where we are. And if you're listening out of state, you may have a local organization wherever Correct. You are. Look into it. So you decided to go. What were you wanting to gain? From the trip, why did you decide to do it? Because obviously it's not easy to leave your family for 10 or
Correct.
And sometimes it is easy, sometimes it's not easy. No. But you're leaving, but you're traveling a lot. So getting away, you'd rather not go away if you don't have to.
Correct. But
you wanted to
being
go.
Away from home was not new to me. So
right.
That made it a little bit easier. It was a little bit longer time, but I wasn't completely worried given my kids' ages and the support that I had back home. I had heard from the multiple friends that had gone on the trip with whichever group they had gone with, that it's a life-altering experience, that while you're there, it's so fulfilling and so enriching, and just having that time on your own without anybody like, Mom, I want a snack, or just having that time to be with yourself, by yourself, and with other women, not only from your group locally, but from other parts of the country and of the world, to share experiences with. I'd heard that it was amazing, and I'm like, I need to go on this trip. And you bring back, obviously, you go very open-minded, and the goal is not to have to come back and all of a sudden become ultra orthodox and keep kosher. And you make what you want out of this trip, and so you take all that and you kind of get pieces from all the lectures and all the experiences, and you kind of take what you want from it and you bring it back, and you either make some changes to your daily life here when you come back home to your family, and there's lectures related to relationship with your kids and relationship with your spouse, and just being an overall better Jewish person for yourself and for the community. And so you come back and you kind of take all those learnings and apply them to your life. And since I came back, I make challah every Friday, which I didn't used to do, and I try to get my daughter involved as much as possible. We really make a point to do Shabbat every Friday. A lot of the learnings from the lectures that I received, I try to apply as much as possible, because they were eye-opening. It's like, I never thought of it that way. So I will recommend this trip. I mean, hands down. And again, having that time to be by yourself, I'd never really done a proper Shabbat where I disconnect from everything 100%. And we were able to do that. So first of all, having that experience of welcoming Shabbat by the kotel and putting my cell phone into a bag and not seeing it for 24 hours, and having that Shabbat lunch at your parents' house. And I mean, that whole Saturday, and walking to your parents' house for Shabbat, and that being disconnected and having that freedom to just be with myself and talk to other women versus being on my phone and what's going on at home, that was amazing. Unfortunately, I haven't done it since I came back. I haven't put my phone away for a whole 24 hours. I don't know why. I should give it a try. I'm sure nothing would fall apart if I did. But just all that experience, hands down, one of the best.
It's so fascinating.
Trips I've
Just
taken.
hearing what you're saying, it's someone who climbed the ladder of success. As you said, you're third in kind, right? It's really, you tasted it, and you hopefully, continue, living that success. But at the same time, just hearing you, like your expression and your excitement of living that meaningful experience in Israel, in a way, like I hear that even more exciting than having closing an account with with Kind. So
because it's
like
personal. So business is business, and I'm good at my job, and I do well, and it's good. But after that's done, like, I'm still gonna have my life and my family, and that's what I'm gonna grow old with. So all these experiences and all these learnings, that's what I'm gonna take with me. Sure, there's snippets of what I've learned, doing business, that I'll be able to translate into my personal life. But when it's all said and done, that's what I'm gonna have to live with for the rest of my life.
And what's so interesting, because we're all, like most people, and because we all go through wanting, want to be successful. Obviously money is a tremendous motivator,
Yeah.
and it's exciting, this and that. But like when you take a step back and someone really experienced what you experienced, it's so refreshing to hear. That's not the end game, and it's so we got to be
things into
so
perspective a
Right.
lot. Like, what's really important? It's a job. And I stress, because of my personality, again, I'm very type A. When I'm in fully. I don't do things half-ass. I don't do, I'm fully vested in what I do. And sometimes I take that a little bit too far. And agents like, yeah, you're selling Kind bars. You're not curing cancer. You can step back a little bit and ease off. It's just my personality doesn't allow me to. But when it comes to my personal life and that relationship that I have with my family, that's something I take really, really seriously, and I'm not going to take my pedal off the metal there.
Right.
Yeah.
So interesting. Here, just also hearing you talk about it more, I think what I've experienced, I've heard from also some of the guys that come back and whatnot, is that what's so hard is you escape to Israel and you experience something that you can never experience. Like, there's no children, you're in a holy land, and they come back and you're back into your regular life. And how do you take that inspiration and continue it? Because it's not those weren't fake emotions, or real emotions.
Correct.
So the question is, why can't I mimic that? Do I need an Israel to do that? So some of the guys are saying, like, you got to do a 2.0 version. Like, anybody who's gone on the past trip, let's do like a second version where you could kind of rekindle what we've done.
And if there is a 2.0 for women, I'm there, especially with your wives.
I'll tell Dean about that.
Please.
So I think that's always the conversation. I know from us is that we studied in yeshiva, and they said that, when you have inspiration, what do the rabbis tell us? When they have inspiration is fleeting. And I shared other things that, for positive things and for negative. Fortunately, person, leaves a funeral and they're extremely sad, and then, slowly but surely that fades, which is a blessing and a curse, right? Because the blessing is the fact that the blessing of that is that if we felt pain so acutely forever, indefinitely, we would crumble, right? But at the same time, the bad part about it is that we forget about those real emotions. Let's say on the positive side, not negative. Inspiration and things that were so meaningful to us, but time passes and it goes away. So I was told that's reality, right? That's what it is. So one of the ways to do it is you attribute it what you do is you concretize it with something physical that you could do, or something attainable. So you're making challah.
Okay.
So now you took that inspiration, saying, okay, I'm putting it here. Or a person says, I'll do this Shabbat candles, or I'm gonna do this mitzvah, whatever it is, and then you somehow you're encapsulating, you're putting
That
those inspiration, that
experience
experience into something physical.
Correct.
And then it lasts.
Yeah.
Which is a cool thing for listeners in general to know, that this is a concept that it's talked about amongst the sages, this idea to do this.
And that's exactly it. That's why, making challah every Friday, and it's something physical that I can do every week that I brought back from the trip. I can't practice everything else on a daily basis, but that I know I can do, and that kind of keeps me linked to the experience that I had. Yeah.
Which is great. Okay. Well, so
Yeah, I guess we'll just a couple fun questions if that's
Yeah,
okay.
we like
Yeah,
that.
let's
Yeah.
go.
What's your favorite Jewish holiday? Well, you must love every holiday because it always involves food.
Yeah.
Yom
Well,
Kippur.
Yom Kippur's not my favorite. No. So I have to say it's twofold. I love Passover, not the matzah. Gosh, not the matzah. But I love the fact that you're sitting around a table in a leisurely way, and you're, reminiscing about the struggles that our ancestors had, and how we've persevered, and how important it is for the Jews to stay united, and telling the story and passing that on, generation to generation. I think that's really meaningful. I love that.
What will it take Daniel to convince him to make Kind bars kosher for Passover?
That's a good one.
I don't know if you even could do
A
that.
PO,
I don't
probably.
know.
Right.
Yeah, get me some volume, and I'll see if I can take it up the ladder.
Okay.
And what's the other question? I'm sure you have tons of them, but what would you say is one of your favorite mitzvahs?
Okay. So one thing that we in my household we cringe over is wasted food. I cannot stand to waste any food. I mean, Adrian will make himself a juice with mushrooms and beef if he could, to have the things not go to waste. My kids call it garbage juice. So food going to waste, and knowing that there's so many people hungry out there, is just something that we cannot fathom. And in fact, when and if I'm ever done with Kind, one of the things that I would perhaps like to do is do something with, a pantry, or something where you're giving food to people in need, because it's just really close to our heart. So we're really mindful of the waste and not wasting. And about 5 years ago, when I moved to Dallas, we had a local team of Kind employees, and as we're in several markets across the country, and we had a kindness day, and so we found ways to give back to our local communities, whether it was Habitat for Humanity or whatever it might be. And one of the activities that we did was volunteering at Minnie's Food Pantry in Plano. And so we went in as a group with all our Kind t-shirts, and it's about sorting cans, and people come in there and they have nowhere to get food. And so it's really humbling, and it kind of grounds you to see all these people that rely on these services to have their meals every single day. So that the volunteering at these type of places, and whenever I have some inventory at my home storage unit that's coming close to maybe being out of shelf life, I shuttle it over to Minnie's and make sure that it gets over to the right hands. I don't know, that's
great. No, that's
it. And my kids, whenever we travel, lucky enough to be able to take trips, with my kids and show them different parts of the country. And whenever we travel and we see, obviously homelessness, and we see people begging for food, and it just, to the point where my son cries and says, can we please give them something? And anytime we leave a restaurant here in Dallas, if there's leftovers, they never make it to my house. We always, find somebody that's in need along the way and give them the leftovers. Just thinking of people going hungry, especially children, is just, no, cannot be.
Wow.
I remember as a kid, it made such an impression on me when my father would give even like a quarter to someone who's either at the corner or wherever. Anytime he had opportunity to give charity, like that always. And when I was 4 or 5 years old, I remember seeing that and making an impression. And to this day, I want to make sure my kids see that.
Correct.
So I think
that's something
it's such an interesting.
And for me, for both Adrian and I, we know that if you give somebody money, they might not do the right thing with it, and they might go buy something that's not going to necessarily, be fulfilling for them. But giving somebody a meal, I mean, everybody needs a meal. Everybody needs to eat. That's nourishment for the body and hopefully for the soul. So, yeah, that's the way to go. So hopefully down the road, you'll see me opening up some sort of, food something to feed the homeless. I don't know.
All right.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining. Hopefully we'll be able to learn, something from this interview. And like we said, real people, real talk, nothing fancy, but we always can learn from one another. A message. So thanks for joining us once again.
This was great. Thank
Stay
you guys
real,
for having
stay
me.
happy.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
All the
Take care.
best. Great.
And now, a Jewish perspective.
We've all been there, where we heard a tremendous speech, watched a video clip, read something that we were so inspired by and said, you know what, I want to be a better father, a better husband, a better Jewish person. And then inevitably what happens is time passes and those emotions go away. Now, what do we do when that happens? God created us with an evil inclination that does what? It tries to get us not to grow. So what happens, I'll share with you a secret that my rabbi taught me that I've kept with me for many, many years that's been so helpful. He says, you're gonna find a time when you're inspired to do something good, be a better person, get involved, and then it's gonna go away. Then you're gonna tell yourself a month later, you know what, I was so inspired back then and now it's not there anymore. That was fake. Me, Tzvi Wax, and me, whoever you may be, you're the 98% of the time what you normally feel like. You're not the 2% of the time that's inspired. That's fake, that's happenstance. That happens to be this certain situation you happen to find yourself in. Someone told you something that touched you, but it's not really you. At that moment, you tell yourself, no, that was really me. That was my unpolished neshama, my soul, the better part of me that at that moment was revealed, but that is my essence, that's really me. Everything else is covered with the mundane life and the things that keep us busy in our pursuits of our everyday life. But don't ever discount those feelings as being fake. They're as real can be. And what we can do is we try to tap into them. And remember, yes, I'm a human being, I'll get distracted. But those feelings, those deep feelings of spirituality or deep feelings of wanting to improve, that's real, and we should tap back into it, and it's never too late to do so. Take care.
Subscribe to Hanging at the Hub on your favorite podcast platform. Follow us at jet.jewisheducationtexas on Instagram and at Jewish Education Texas on Facebook. Or watch the show at jetexas.org.